Hello, welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. Today I was going to go through the planet transits or Gochara for February 2024, and this is from a Vedic astrology or Jyotish perspective. And it seemed like the theme for the month was writing a new story. So let's get into it. Note beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. And then you might read the rest of this disclaimer for more information. Okay, so if you're new to Vedic astrology, Jyotish, or my videos, all of my teaching videos on the subject are in my concepts playlist, so they can be found there. And wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on that subject. Since this is an interpretation video, I incorporate a lot of different concepts. And so these are some of the ones, some of the videos you might watch if you're a beginner to get more out of this talk. So there's North, South, and East Indian style charts, that video. And I actually cover Western charts as well, but that's not in the title. Um, Introduction to navigating a birth chart, the Lugna, ascendant, rising sign, first house, all different names for the same thing. Introduction to the constellations or rashis, constellation or rashi categories, planetary aspects, a directional strength or digbala, natural benefic and malefic planets or grahas, planetary war or graha yuddha, planetary combustion or asta, karako bhava, which translates as planet breaking house. That's a whole concept. Nakshatras, lunar mansions. And then I have a whole playlist on each of the planets and what they individually signify. So if you're want to know more about any particular planet, I would go to that playlist. I have a growing playlist on each of the houses or bhavas. So if you're interested in learning more about a particular house, I would go to that playlist. And then I do also talk about different yogas or planetary combinations, and I have a growing playlist on that. And some of the ones I'll talk about today are things like saraswati yoga, sarpa yoga, pravraja yoga. All right, so there's a lot here. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's go through the different dates coming up in February. And also, if you're interested, I did a whole sort of 2024 analysis, and that's in my Winter Solstice Uttarayana 2023 video. So you can check that out if you're looking for a video on the energy of the whole year. But as far as February goes, so February 1st, Mercury just moved into Capricorn or Makara, as it's known as in Sanskrit, and Mars just moved into Uttarashada Nakshatra. Then yesterday, because today's the 4th, I believe, 3rd of February, Jupiter moved into Bharani Nakshatra. Then February 5th, Mars moves into Capricorn. February 6th, Sun moves into Dhanashta Nakshatra. February 7th, Mercury moves into Shravana Nakshatra. Excuse me. February 8th, Mercury goes combust or asta. February 9th, there's going to be a new moon in Capricorn or Makara. This is going to be in Dhanashta Nakshatra. And also, Venus moves into Uttarashada Nakshatra the same day. February 11th, Venus moves into Capricorn, and the Sun goes combust or asta. Then February 13th, Sun moves into Aquarius or Kumbha. 15th of February, Mercury moves into Dhanashta Nakshatra. February 18th, Mars moves into Shravana Nakshatra. February 19th, Sun moves into Shatabisha Nakshatra. And that same day, a lot's going on. So Mercury moves to Aquarius, Venus moves to Shravana Nakshatra, and that's the beginning of a planetary war, which is fairly long, about 5 days worth, between Venus and Mars. So the end of the month is, you'll see, we have a second planetary war. So the end of the month is going to be a lot of changes, looks like, or a lot of movement, a lot of potentially chaos as well. February 23rd, Mercury moves to Shatabisha Nakshatra. 24th of February, there's going to be a full moon in Leo, Simha, in the nakshatra Magha. On the 27th of February, Mars has an exact aspect on Jupiter. And then that's the start of a planetary war between Mercury and Saturn, which is going to be a couple days, 27th through 28th of February. And then on the 28th of February, also, Sun crosses Saturn. So let's take a look at all these energies here. Okay, so first off, um, we have here what I do in the beginning is I just show you the current sky pattern on the first of the month, and then we look at the sky pattern at the end of the month and see how things change. So on the left here, we have a chart for February 1st. This happens to be 10:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the reason the time is just there for your information, but you can see in both of these charts, I have set Aries or Mesha as the rising sign. So what I've created here is this is the natural zodiac where the first constellation is in the first house. So Aries in the first house. And the natural zodiac you can kind of think as a zodiac for the entire planet. Because if you yeah, because time and place, makes a difference depending on what you're looking at. So also in this first chart, we have Moon in the nakshatra of Chitra, which is all about structure, really. So it's sort of like mental structure, building things, public structures, that sort of thing, is what I would take for this, since that's what the moon represents. The Dasha period for this moment in time is Mars, Venus, Venus, Ketu, which is interesting. Because the thing is that as- I'm going to talk about that quite a bit, is that the combination when Mars and Venus move into Capricorn, where Mercury is currently, um, because of Mercury's placement, that means you'll also get an aspect by Ketu. So Um, what I'm seeing here is there may be kind of an unusual love story. Um, yeah, we'll talk about that. There is also a parivartana yoga here, an exchange of houses between Jupiter and Mars. So there's going to be a lot of Jupiterian energy as well as Mars. So there may be enthusiasm, but also potentially legal issues. Could be. And at this moment in time, you can see in this chart that there's a Kala Sarpa-ish pattern. So almost all the planets are on one side of the Rahu Ketu axis. You can see that gray dotted line. There's only Jupiter on one side of it. So I would take that as Kala Sarpa-ish. So Kala Sarpa yoga indicates ambition, um, very simply. There's also a Saraswati yoga here. So and I have a whole video on that. So because of the placements of Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus, Saraswati yoga is here. And, that indicates things like artistic endeavors, as well as education. So, what I was really seeing here is that I think there's some energy here in terms of healing relationships and recovery of loss. We're just going to take this generally. Um, because let's see. Well, I mean, we're talking, so if we're looking mostly at Mars and Venus, those are in the ninth house here. We know that they're going to go into planetary war. Um, but when they're in planetary war, they're going to actually be shifted up. We'll see in the second chart here into Capricorn. So I think there's going to be some shakeups here in terms of relationship, but because we still have this exchange between Jupiter and Mars. Jupiter is currently in Ashwini, which is a nakshatra indicating things like this kind of rescuing energy. And so Jupiter's there. So at the moment, Jupiter is shining its light, its energy onto Mars and Venus. So, sort of a masculine energy, feminine energy, or men, women, so at the current time, there's some balance here, but I think also some healing energy here. And then Mars will, um, you can take Mars back into the first house. Mars in its own sign of Aries is going to bring strength, but also like initiatives. So that's what I was pretty much seeing here. The other thing is that you do have Jupiter aspecting onto the moon and moon aspecting onto Jupiter. So that can also be healing of like mind and emotions. What else is there? You do have Saturn in its own sign in the 11th house. So, and that Saturn is aspecting onto Jupiter. Jupiter's a planet that represents optimism. So, and Saturn has been in its own sign for a while now, I think almost a year or about a year. And it's currently in Shatavisha nakshatra, which is translated as 100 healers. So, Saturn being a natural malefic and the nakshatra of Shatavisha in its own sign of Aquarius, that's going to be really, since Aquarius is a fixed air sign, that's going to be fixed ideas. So these are going to be ideas that are difficult to heal or change or shift. And because there's this kind of rigidity with ideas, even though and they're strong ideas, the Saturn is going to drag on Jupiter, which again is a planet that represents optimism and goodness and generosity and that sort of thing. So this again, Saturn can represent things like skepticism, fear, depression. So that kind of reserved energy or skeptical energy or tentative energy. And you can see here also Saturn and Jupiter are almost within the same degree. And that's been going on for a while, and that's going to continue on until I think February 19th. Don't quote me on that. I do have the date later on in the talk, but for a good while here. Um, so, yeah, so even though there's some attempt to ameliorate things, there may not be full throttle enthusiasm or optimism about that happening. And in the meantime, we have Sun, I've circled here, which is in Capricorn. Sun in the 10th house, though, that's a situation of Digbala. So the Sun is going to have directional strength. So that means the Sun is very strong, and the Sun represents career. So it looks like with this healing energy, there's some really strong impetus to really work hard, really push the career. Jupiter is also circled because Jupiter also has Digbala directional strength. So Jupiter's, at least in this configuration, is particularly strong and doing what it can to shine its light. And luckily, because it is in parivartana, it has an extra house that it's aspecting into. So if you take Jupiter into the 9th house, it'll be there, but also it'll aspect into the 3rd house here. And then you see you'll have Jupiter in its own sign of Sagittarius, which is a lot of Jupiterian energy. And that's kind of the nest in which Mars and Venus are currently, at least just for a few more days. And all that light is shining into the 3rd house. So that might be like trying to improve, like especially written communications, like maybe texting or emailing somebody, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, but then, okay, so, and then we shift to the end of the month here. And the second chart is February 29th. So we have a leap year this year. And this is particular moments, 8:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, this is the first constellation, the first house, national zodiac. Moon at this time, though, is in Swati. So Swati nakshatra. So Swati is a lot more. It's like the symbol of that is new grass blowing in the wind. So it's a very fragile energy. Like typically, when I see people with important Swati placements, they have a lot of like you can just feel it. You don't even have to know them that deeply. It's just you meet them and you can just see that they're a very nervous, restless person. Um, and then you can see here that the Dasha sequence is now Rahu, Saturn, Mercury, Venus. Okay. And Rahu's still in the 12th house of like it can be loss and expenses, but it can also be like a drive towards isolation or retreat, or it can also be like foreign places. And then Saturn, Mercury are together here. You can see this big blue circle here. So you can see Mercury, Saturn, and Sun are in the 11th house. So these planets are all going to be, you can see like Not just, well, they're all in Saturn, so they're all going to be dominated. So Mercury and Sun are dominated by Saturn. The other thing is that you have this massive Saturn aspecting on Jupiter. So Jupiter is within the grip of Saturn. Um, and Venus and Mars are also in a Saturnian sign. They're in Capricorn. So you have, what is it, 6 out of 9 planets are under the influence of this massively strong Saturn. So that's going to be a lot of drag. I mean, if you if you've been feeling like, things have been dragging, the end of the month of February may be even more so. And the thing is that, again, I mentioned we have two planetary wars going on here at the end of the month, one between Venus and Mars and the other one between Venus and Saturn. So it's almost like I almost want to think earthquake. I mean, Saturn does represent, not literally, not, it might be somewhere in the world, but hopefully not, hopefully that's not bad. But it's almost like the end of the month is going to be, I think, fairly rocky. There are going to be some big upsets because, again, Venus and Mars is probably something related to relationships, and Mercury and Saturn. One, medically, they can, and you have Mercury, Sun, and Saturn here together. All those planets represent like the nervous system. So Sun is central nervous system, Mercury is peripheral nervous system, and Saturn is a neuromuscular junction. There may literally be pain here. Not just physical pain, but mental pain because Mercury represents the analytical mind. So again, it might be about a lot of restructuring. So again, a personal earthquake of some kind. What else here? This one also has a Kala Sarpa yogish pattern because Jupiter is the only planet on one side of Rahu Ketu axis. There is a pravraja yoga, so this Mercury Sun Saturn combination in the 11th house, that's a pravraja yoga. So that's a yoga that indicates like a life focus. But that's, again, if you watch that video, I talk about, you got to figure out, it's helpful to figure out um, what the strongest planet is in the Pravraja Yoga because that'll tell you like kind of the flavor of it. And so clearly the strongest planet here is Saturn, and Saturn dominated Pravraja Yoga is pretty hardcore. Like the description of it is like somebody who's like completely off the grid. So again, that talks about some level of harshness here. Oh, what else? And we do have a ruchaka yoga here. I circled Mars. Mars is exalted, and it has Digbala also in Capricorn in the 10th house. So Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and has Digbala directional strength in 10th house. So Mars is especially strong here, which creates a ruchaka yoga. I don't have a video on this, but this means that Mars is especially strong, and it creates a certain yoga, like it's a Raj yoga, so it brings power, a lot of power. And since it's in the 10th house, this could mean that there's like large gains or large energy to be had in the world of career, especially like 9 to 5 jobs type thing, um, as well as like fame, even. And the thing is here, the placement of Mars is aspecting into the first house of Aries. So in this particular chart, if it was somebody's chart, this is somebody who would have a tremendous amount of personal power as well, especially, and then we relate it back to the 10th house where Mars is, like, especially in the world of career. Um, yeah. So stars, let me just look at my notes here. So yeah, I mean, again, if we're talking about, a world chart, if this is a world chart, um, you can also see all these arrows. So Mercury, Sun, Saturn, that Pravraja Yoga are all shining their light into the 5th house. You can see Saturn aspecting its light in the 5th house. And Mars is also, you have 5 planets shining their light in the 5th house, even though, again, without the arrows, the 5th house looks like it's doing nothing unless you really see where the energies are going. So there's a lot of energy in the 5th house. The 5th house is in the natural zodiac is ruled by Leo. So there's some kind of which can be related to like a stage, so some sort of public event. And especially with Jupiter and Mars, those together can indicate things like legal matters. They can also, and then with Mercury, Sun, Saturn, government, law, some sort of, and I would say probably fairly painful. Although Sun, at this time, Mercury and Saturn are both combos, so you can't see them. So the only planets you can see in the fifth house are Sun, Jupiter, and Mars. So again, that's some sort of new, I think, legal initiatives. Medically, the fifth house is related to um, things typically below the diaphragm, like the upper GI, so like stomach, liver, gallbladder. And Jupiter can represent things like fatty food, and Mars can represent inflammation. Sun can represent inflammation, so this might be problems with stomach, gallbladder, liver. Um, Also, the Sun represents the heart, and I think I've mentioned in other videos. Some people will take the fourth house to represent heart because the fourth house represents the chest area, like lungs typically. Um, but I found that and other people take it as well, is that the fifth house they use for the heart. And so with the Sun very strong here, there's some protection, which is good. But this could also be Jupiter and Mars, like fat and inflammation. Like this could be atherosclerosis or maybe some kind of myocardial infarction, like some sort of mild heart attack potentially. Luckily, because Sun is in its own house, there should be some protection, but not necessarily for medically. That's not always used for health as protection. But it looks like there's going to be some pain involved here. So Mercury, Saturn, and it's going to be fairly intense because Sun and Mars, that's a lot of inflammation in Jupiter. So watch out for that. I mean, that might be part of this, these planetary wars, at least the second one with Mercury and Saturn at the end of the month. That's going to bring up pain, unfortunately, in different ways for different people. All right, so the first part of the month, there's some attempt to, get things into balance and order, and towards the end of the month, I think things are going to get fairly intense. So, okay, let's get into the different planets here. So let's look at Mercury first. Also, it's called Buddha in Sanskrit. And Mercury, again, if you watch the video, I talk about how it represents things like the rational mind, decision making. It can represent business, travel, education, speech, those sorts of things. But again, I have a whole video on all the different things that Mercury represents. But February 1st, Mercury just moved into Capricorn. Capricorn, since it's ruled by Saturn, is a friend sign to Mercury. But Capricorn's a very grounded, practical sign because it's an earth sign. So Mercury was in Sagittarius, which is a fire sign, and Capricorn, or sorry, Jupiter was aspecting into its own sign. So there's probably a lot of enthusiasm or optimism about new actions and stuff. And now it's about putting those ideas that, kind of came to life or percolated up into some sort of grounded practical action. February 7th, Mercury moves into Shravana nakshatra. So at the beginning of the month, February 1st, it's an Uttarashada, which is symbolized, that nakshatra is symbolized by an elephant tusk. So you can kind of think of like powerful, piercing victory. That's the energy of it. When it moves into Shravana, though, Shravana, the symbol there is three footprints in the sand. So it's a lot more, I think, subtle. But also, Shravana is related to hearing. And their energy of Shravana is kind of like long traditions of oral communication and that sort of thing, like maybe reciting verses of the Vedas or the Bible or Quran or whatever spiritual, religious text you like to prefer. And the thing is, at that time, uh, Mercury is going to be conjoined by February 7th. Hold on here. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. I was just double checking on some dates. Anyway, when Mercury moves into Shravana Nakshatra, Mars and Sun are also going to be in Capricorn. So Mars is exalted there, and Sun is there, and both Mars and Sun are Pitta planets. They're fire planets. That's a lot of action. So there's going to be this really like strong drive, or even like decision to be very industrious. Just like almost like pedal to the metal, back to the grindstone, that sort of thing, to really like hammer things out. Then on February 8th, Mercury goes combust or asta. So when we have a planet, and again, I have a whole video on the concept. When a planet goes combust, the reason why combustion happens is a true planet gets too close to the sun. Because it gets so close to the sun, it's eclipsed by the sun. You can't see it in the sky anymore. So when a planet goes combust, the outer symbols, the outer things that the planet symbolizes are not visible, but the energy of the planet are stronger internally. So if we're talking about Mercury, Mercury can symbolize things like business and travel, technology, like computers. Um, so there may be issues there, like there may be less travel, communication also. And it'll go more internal. So this is more about like thinking, considering, contemplating, maybe making decisions, planning, that sort of thing. February 15th, Mercury goes into Dhanishta nakshatra. So Dhanishta is symbolized by a drum. So this is about, getting rhythm here, finding some new rhythm. And let's see. And by that time, so not only is exalted Mars there, Sun will move out, but Venus will be there. So then there's this like kind of uh, Mercury is like communication, Mars and Venus again, that might be like a romantic type relationship uh, thing. So this, what I see here is like there's like this practical communication, like establishing a new rhythm of practical communication between couples that may be happening. Like if the communication has been altered or intermittent or something like that, that might come around based on this. And then February 19th, Mercury moves into Aquarius, and so we're moving from the material world, the very practical material world, to the idea world. So this is where Mercury might kind of go far and wide in terms of really considering different ideas and options and brainstorming, that sort of thing. Then February 23rd, Mercury moves into Shatabisha Nakshatra. So this is what I already kind of mentioned on the first slide about first and last day of the month. It's going to be there with Sun and Saturn. So, a lot of nervous system, there's going to be like pain, nervous system dysfunction, especially because in Shatabisha, you're going to have three planets in a nakshatra that's all about things that are difficult to heal. So, and it might also be something like bringing new discussions to an old problem, maybe, or difficulty. It could even be difficulty, even though there might be new discussion. It may not be an easy discussion, or you might not get very far. And then at the end of the month, Mercury and Saturn are in planetary war, February 27th through 28th. But this war is going to be combust. So this isn't like a war that you're necessarily going to see on the outer plane in the material world, 3D world. But you might still get something like neuromuscular pain and dysfunction because Mercury represents peripheral nerves and Saturn represents neuromuscular junction. But it could be, since it's internal, it's like, because Mercury again is ideas and decisions, but Saturn is like, tradition and structure. So it's almost like the more flexible Mercury is coming up against a wall. So it's sort of like theory. Mercury might come up with all these ideas, especially since it's all happening in Aquarius. But then it's like, how do we actually make this happen? Like Saturn's just like, what are the nuts and bolts of this thing in the real world? And there could be changes, like pretty significant changes in communication, travel, education. And again, this is probably more internal. So it might be like plans for communication, like maybe you're planning a trip, and then when this war comes up at the end of the month, you're like, well, maybe I'll delay the trip or something like that, or maybe I'll um, push off education, or maybe start education earlier, like shift plans is what I'm seeing here. All right, so that's Mercury. And then the sun. So 6th of February, Sun moves into Dhanishta Nakshatra. Sun represents things like just general life, vitality, and again, Dhanishta Nakshatra is symbolized by a drum. So again, establishing a new life rhythm. So again, because Sun and Mars with Mercury are all in Capricorn at that point, I believe. And Sun and Mars are putting all this fire into like really creating things in the 3D on the material plane. It's like establishing some kind of rhythm with that. Then on February 13th, Sun moves into Aquarius Kumbh, and again, this is about turning the practical from the sort of practical side to more of a planning, engineering, dreaming, more about dreaming and considering type energy rather than a nuts and bolts manufacturing type energy. Uh, and February 19th, Sun moves into Shatabisha Nakshatra. So again, there's going to be difficulties here because Mercury and Saturn are right around there too. Difficulties with health, career, sense of purpose even. Those are the things that Sun represents. And again, Sun is going to be the only planet. The things that Sun symbolizes are the only planet, are the only things that you'll be able to see in the external world because Saturn and Mercury are so close to the Sun at that point, they're combust. So the Sun represent things like bones and eyes, and heart, central nervous system. So those are, if we're talking about health, those are probably things that may be at the forefront of any kind of health issue. Then February 28th, Sun crosses Saturn. So sort of like Mercury and Saturn going at it. The Sun represents again health, career, sense of purpose. So there's gonna be a restructuring there. So even at the beginning, so it's sort of like at the beginning of the month, even though there's this kind of like, yeah, let's just work hard and get into rhythm and that sort of thing. It looks like at the end of the month that a lot of those plans are gonna like switch up, whether whether you like it or not. It looks like. Um, so just don't get too attached, I guess, to the things you're starting out with at the beginning of the month. All right, so as always, I like to go through charts to exemplify some of the energies we're seeing in the current sky pattern. So as you'll see here, this chart is true to that. This is the chart of Katrin Jokobsdottir. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. She's the current prime minister of Iceland. So, and you'll see from her chart, and some of the things we've talked about, that her chart is actually similar in a lot of ways to the current sky pattern. You can see in her chart, she's got Ketu and Rahu on the ones in Aries Libra axis. They're switched, but they're still, there's a lot of there's some differences, but a lot of similarities between Ketu and Rahu. So she's got that. And she's got Mercury and Sun in Capricorn. So we've got that going on. What else do we have going on? We have Venus in Sagittarius. We've got that going on. And Mars is aspecting into Sagittarius. So there is this Mars and Venus energy in Sagittarius both currently. She's got Saturn. What is it? She's got Saturn in Cancer, but actually Saturn, what is it? There's a parivartana, there's an exchange of houses between the moon and Saturn because Saturn is in moon sign and moon is in Saturn sign. And I have this like kind of purple arrow from the moon with a question mark because you can see the moon's very close to the Aquarius Capricorn line here. And the thing is, I don't have a birth time for her. So this is a Surya Lagna, sun rising chart. Because again, I don't have a birth time, so I can't do um, what is it, a typical Udaya Lagna chart. And I can't really do a moon Lagna chart because again, these numbers are based on noon. That's typically what people will do just to get some idea of a chart. So I was like, well, moon can be, it's pretty close here. So half the day looks like moon was in Aquarius and half the day moon was in Cancer or Capricorn. Either way, though, moon is in a sign of Saturn. So you still get a parivartana. So it's kind of like, do you get a 1-7 exchange or do you get a 2-7 exchange here? And for her, I'm not sure there's huge differences. I actually think it makes a little more sense that the moon was in Aquarius for her, but it could be either way. But yeah, you can see there's a lot of similarities between her chart and the current sky pattern. So she was born on, to get into the birth data here, she was born on February 1st, so February birthday, 1976. I don't have a birth time, and she was born in Reykjavik, Iceland. And again, this is a Surya Lagna chart. The Lagna Nakshatra, I have no idea. The Moon Nakshatra, she was actually in Dhanishta, whether she was in Aquarius or Capricorn. The moon was in Capricorn or Aquarius. The moon was in Dhanishta most of the day, so starting at midnight in the morning till 8 o'clock in the night. So she was probably a Dhanishta nakshatra. Um, and if not Dhanishta, yeah, maybe Shatabisha. I'm guessing not Shatabisha, based on her chart, but maybe, possibly. But statistically, she's probably more of a Dhanishta, which again is symbolized that nakshatra is symbolized by a drum, so rhythm. She's really into rhythm. And because the moon is here in let's say the second house, maybe it's the first house, but again, I think it works better in the moon in the second house for her if you know her background, besides the politics that she's involved in. And so the second house would have either moon or Saturn if you do the parivartana that way. So that would be bringing rhythm, like a regular rhythm, and Saturn, if moon is in Dhanishta, so rhythm, Saturn is in Pushya. So Pushya nakshatra is symbolized by a cow's udder. So it's a very nourishing, stabilizing energy. So she's all about stabilizing rhythms for the public. The moon is a public, and Saturn is kind of like a servant. It can also be bureaucracy. So she's all about, and especially talking, the second house is about, oral communication, especially bringing, stability and nurturing rhythms to people's lives, public life. The other thing about her, I mean, I don't know much about her politics because I don't know anything about Icelandic politics, but she actually, when she went to college, she had two majors. She majored in Icelandic language and literature, I believe is part of that, as well as, and her minor was in French, a language and literature. So she's all about languages, especially foreign languages. So um, it makes sense to me that her second house is particularly strong with moon, again, moon rhythm, mind, and also Saturn here. But even if you do the parivartana with the, first seventh house, Saturn is still the lord of the second house. So it makes sense to me that the moon and Saturn here, especially since she's so proficient at languages, to have them both in second house. But even so, I think it still works. If you do the parivartana on the 1-7 axis, that means she's going to have a very strong, personal strength, which I think clearly she does if she became Prime Minister of Iceland. Excuse me. And then Moon is going to make the 7th house of independent business and relationships stronger. Yeah, so I think it works either way. I don't know. It didn't really concern me too much. Let's see, the Day Lord. Hard to say. It was kind of 50-50, either Saturn or Sun. Statistically, Sun is the one, but and again, I'm not so sure. I don't know. I'm not so sure that that's super important. Hurrah, I have no idea. The birth dasha, probably Mars, but could also be Rahu. Um, so you can see so far, Sun kind of makes sense. Mars kind of makes sense because again, Sun is they're both leadership planets. They're both fire Pitta planets. Sun is the president, king, and Mars is the CEO, commander in chief. So that sounds like her. Since she's prime minister. The other thing that's I think interesting about this particular chart, just to give you some context, because she was born in Reykjavik, so close to the North Pole, your lugnas are going to be very skewed, especially because she was born in the middle of winter here. So days are going to be very short and the nights are going to be very long. So if you're analyzing a birth chart where somebody's born closer to the equator, your lugnas are going to be closer on average to like 2 hours each. So you divide 24 hours by 12 lugnas, 12 houses, you get 2 hours apiece. But since there's such a skewing here, um, this Capricorn, rising sign or sun rising sign here, it's only 27 minutes long. So, so it's what we would call a sign of short ascension. And then opposite some of these other signs, it's almost 3.5 hours of lugna time. So even though typically we would say the Surya Lugna, the sun rising chart is less precise. It's actually in some ways more, if she is truly a Capricorn rising, this is very precise for her because the Lugna is only 27 minutes long. Anyway, so, just to think about, where people are born and how that affects charts. So let's go through the chart a little bit here. So again, Capricorn, rising or sun rising sign, Surya Lugna, Makra in Sanskrit. It's a movable earth sign, so a lot of practical action. Also, they say charapati. So if you're interested in like all that movable and dual earth, water, fire signs, I would look at my constellation categories video if you want to learn about that. Okay, so let's look at the Lugna here. The top diamond. This is a North Indian style chart, and to get the number of the houses, you count counterclockwise. Little 10 in the bottom corner of the first house here. That 10 represents the 10th sign of the zodiac, so Capricorn. All right. So we have Mercury in the rising sign. Mercury's retrograde, that gives it strength. You can see it is Sundi. It's in the first degree of the sign, so it just moved there, I think within the last 24 hours, I'm guessing. Retrograde, that line under it means retrogression, and I have a whole video on that. It also has Digbala, so it has a directional strength. So Mercury's pretty strong here. And again, Mercury represents things like rationality, decision making, that sort of thing. And it's an Uttarashada. So I mentioned already that nakshatra is all about a very strong, clear victory. So that sounds like her. Um, then the sun is in Shravana. And Shravana we talked about a little bit. Shravana, again, the symbol there is 3 footprints in the sand. And there's a lot of indication of education and listening and like oral tradition, so like storytelling. Okay. And then the Saturn, you do have Saturn aspecting here. Saturn will be swa. So that brings, again, even without the parivartana, that brings Saturn's energy into Capricorn. So that's going to bring strength to the whole kind of body, character, personality of this person. So this is somebody with the sun here, Saturn here, Mercury here, and maybe Moon. Because if Moon is doing a parivartana with Saturn, yeah, either way, whether Moon is in first house or second house, you're gonna have the Moon here, so you're gonna have Moon energy. Um, yeah, and we just don't know if Moon is actually in Dhanashta, but probably it is. So, it's like, so if you put this all together, it's somebody who's practical, traditional, active, industrious, a leader, a nurturing, thoughtful person who's also a storyteller. Great at communication. Is what I'm seeing here. And again, I don't know anything about her except I think the only reason why her chart, I even have information on her chart, or I even thought about her chart was in the fall a few months back, there were all those, at least in the States, we had all these like protests going on or union shutdowns of like the car industry and Hollywood and all this sort of thing. And there was also that kind of, protesting thing going on in Iceland, except that it was all the women, including her, didn't go to work that day or a week or something like that. Like there was a shutdown in terms of female contribution to all the workings of the country. So I don't know. I started kind of looking at Iceland and what was going, and then they had a pretty big I don't know if it's still going on. They had a pretty big volcanic explosion. Yeah. So but Iceland doesn't tend to get onto the I guess world radar too often. But when it does, it comes through strong. So again, this is all basic stuff about the prime minister here. Then the second house. So again, Moon in Dhanishta probably. Maybe Saturn, even if they're not there, Saturn's going to be super strong and nurturing. So, because it's the lord of the second house and it's in Pushya nakshatra. So we're looking at like again foreign languages here because Saturn could represent foreign languages, also old languages, which Icelandic, is pretty old. French, I don't know if she did modern French or because the modern French is actually not that old. I was watching some talk. And there's a comparison, like at the time of the French Revolution. So what was that, 17 something, 1780 something? Um, and there was a lot of dialects spoken in France at that time. So I think at that time they said only about 50% of people spoke kind of anything close to the modern standardized French that, Frisian French or whatever that people speak now. And that was only what, 250 years ago or something? I mean, that's not that long. I mean, compared to something like Icelandic or so yeah, old languages. Old languages, she's into that. But again, a nurturing, supportive, stabilizing, energy here. And the second house also represents, besides oral communication, family and money. So it looks like, that kind of energy runs through the family and, finances for her. And it's also very much since it's Aquarius, it's all about like ideas and stuff. And I think her family generally has a fairly long list of very, famous, talented people in arts, academia, and politics. So she's pretty much going with the family line here. Then the third house, she has Jupiter in its own sign, so it's Swa and Revati. So this could be publishing, very much be publishing, because Jupiter's publishing. It can also be foreign literature and writing. And actually, another thing I found interesting about her, she just published a crime novel, I think, last year. So, again, this like language and writing and publishing and, all humanities and stuff, especially related to like language and literature. She's deep into that. Um, and then the fourth house here, she has Ketu and Bharani, aspected by Saturn. This can seem pretty tough here because K2 is a fairly explosive planet. K2 can represent things that are abrupt. But Bharani's an abrupt nakshatra. Bharani's all about like life and death and cycles and stuff like that. And then Saturn's a planet that represents death and chronic disease. And Saturn aspecting into Aries. Saturn's like debilitated there. And that's going to be a lot of chaotic energy. Um, but the thing is, she has two planets in the fourth house. The fourth house represents like secondary education, like like university level, and she has 2 degrees. So in and the lord of the fourth house is Mars and Rohini. So that has an indication of arts. Rohini has an indication of arts. So two foreign or even old languages that she studied here. That's there. Also, her mother was a psychologist. So it looks like her mother was very much into getting deep into how do I put it? The word tragedy comes to mind. So, helping with renewal from especially like maybe separations, because K2 and I don't know what kind of psychologist her mother was, but it wasn't light and fluffy, that's for sure. Um, going deep into things and ending old cycles and creating new structures. And it looks a bit messy, but when you do deep psychology, that's kind of what that's all about. And then the fifth house here, we have Mars and Rohini. So attractive, grounded mind. This is her, the fifth house is her house of intellect. So she's an initiator, but again, Rohini, like, that's what's interesting about her chart is even though she's like, prime minister of a country, her chart is very different from other charts I've seen or other charts I've seen of like, political leaders and stuff, high level political leaders. I mean, they're fairly aggressive. But her chart, like all the nakshatras here, it's like Pushya, nurturing, Dhanishta, rhythm, Dravana, education, and oral tradition. Jupiter Swa, very benefic, charitable, and that Jupiter Swa is aspecting into the ninth house of father, but also government. Um, Mars is in Rohini. Even the like the um, I don't know, Venus and Purvasha. These are all like pretty gentle energies. The only ones that were kind of a little bit different were Ketu and Rahu. And she has run the Rahu Mahadasha. So I think during Rahu, because Rahu's in Vishaka, which is a victory nakshatra, but it's like victory at all costs. So probably during her Rahu period, she was a little bit more aggressive. And that's where I think she sort of got established. But I think once she shifted out of Rahu to Jupiter, and now she's currently in her Saturn period, then once she kind of established herself, kind of formed her roots, in the political system, now she can just do her thing. So she was probably fairly aggressive in getting there, but now that she's there, she can just relax and do the job, I guess. Um, let's see. Then what else? I didn't do all the houses because again, I didn't have time to go deep into all the charts I'm going to present to you. But seventh house, so Saturn, Moon, aspected by Mercury, Sun, Jupiter. Okay, so Moon into this house, that's going to make it strong. Jupiter shining in this house, it's exalted. I mean, this is going to be a massive seventh house. And I think I mentioned in my other videos, I often see world leaders having extremely strong seventh houses, which you would maybe think the ninth house, because the ninth house is related to government. And when there's a lot of planets related to ninth house, that can indicate like government related positions. But I think the thing is that these people who are like head of governments, they kind of bop around. They'll be head of this and head of that. So they're sort of like a high level consultant in a way where yeah, but anyway, so that's true for her again. Um, but Saturn again, nurturing public, nurturing the public through service, independent business, and writing, publishing, speech. So I don't know, probably whenever she gets tired of politics, if she ever does, probably get into, like she just published that crime novel or whatever last year. She'd probably do more of that because Mercury and Jupiter are all about, education and speech and writing and language. So there you go. Then the ninth house I mentioned is aspected by Saturn and Jupiter. Her father was a banker, educator. So, that makes sense, especially with that really strong Jupiter. And so her father also had a massive seventh house, if you look at the seventh house from the ninth house. 10th house here. Oh, this is the Rahu and Vishaka, so ambitious, win at all costs. And again, the 10th house is like fame and, 9 to 5 job type stuff. And so again, I think in a Rahu period, she was probably amping it up. Because again, that's the only planet that's really kind of strong, where she might have um, lost a few friends along the way because she was pushing too hard. Then the 11th house is aspected by Mars and really strong Saturn. And Mars is aspecting in its own sign. So, her clubs and groups of people she associates with are going to be into arts and ideas, philosophers, leaders, um, people who are interested in transforming society. And also with the Mars aspecting its own house of 11th house of income, again, another sign that money's pretty solid for her. Um, then the 12th house, Venus and Purvashad aspected by Mars. So Venus and Mars, that's a passion combination, and the 12th house can be, places of isolation, but also foreign places, which again, she, was learning languages and stuff like that, foreign languages. So I think she has a passion for foreign travel as well as art because Venus represent art. So that's the Prime Minister of Iceland. Okay, so let's get into Venus and Mars. 1st of February, Mars moves into Uttarashada Nakshatra. So again, the victory nakshatra. So and Mars's initiatives and actions and stuff. So I think Mars is going to be a lot more lively, outwardly, especially because Mars was combust for like 4 months since like September or something. So I think now that Mars is back online externally, I think people are like, oh yeah, let's finally like get moving here. Then February 5th. Mars moves into Capricorn where it's exalted. So yeah, time to get busy, be industrious in a very practical way. February 9th. And Venus moves into Uttarashada, although it's still in Sagittarius where Jupiter is aspecting into its own sign. So this is going to be like victory and like the more, I think, high-minded some symbolisms of Venus. So love, art, travel, pets. I mean, it's going to be pretty push because again, Venus and Jupiter are the two great benefics, and they're always benefic. So it can be a little bit of a, for a couple days there. I mean, Venus is whatever. So February 5th to the 11th. What is that? 6 days, almost a week. Venus is going to be a bit dreamy, I would say. Yeah, and supported, dreamy and supported. And then February 11th, Venus moves into Capricorn. So now it's about, Venus is time to get, real with Venus, instead of like, you know, what do they call it? Dream castles or sky castles or something like kind of dreamy. It's about kind of grounding that energy. So it's time to get practical about love and art and travel. The thing though is that at this time, I don't know if I mentioned it, but when Mercury moved into Capricorn, because I did mention this, I think. That means that K2's energy is going to be in Capricorn. So for a time in Capricorn, you're going to have Venus, Mars, Mercury, and an aspect of K2. Now, when you have K2 with Venus, or Rahu with Venus, because K2 and Rahu can symbolize things that are foreign or unusual or hidden or that sort of thing. Um, you can get partners who are very different from yourself. So people who are foreign. And it might be like a foreign country. It might be a different part of the country that's very different. It might be a person of different socioeconomic status. It might be a person of like a different race. It could be a person of like different health status. It could be like a person of vastly different age. It can also be, especially with Mercury and K2, because Mercury and K2 are planets that symbolize like neutral energy. Um, in terms of like feminine versus masculine. And Venus is like the stereotypical feminine energy, and Mars is the typical, like a stereotypical masculine energy. So you have like Venus and Mars together. So there's this, I think, probably more awareness, or even like if it's a relationship, part of that relationship, what that relationship is doing is in the external world, balancing male and female energy. Now, when you have K2 and Mercury in the mix, because they're neutral energies, that's even more so bringing this like, balancing energy. But then you have K2 there. Um, this could be like an LGBTQIA type situation as well. Where again, it's like, it could also be like maybe somebody pops up into your life who's just not your usual type. That sort of thing. Like somebody who's like a little bit unusual, um, or different or something like that, because the K2 is going to bring that unusualness. But again, with the K2 there, I've just seen like in charts of, a bunch of people I know who are like gay or lesbian or whatever, and they often have like a Venus and it's a K2 Rahu combination is what I've seen. Um, Not that, for everybody, it's going to be that, but that could be another quote unquote, unusual or foreign situation. And not that it's like, bad or wrong or anything, and not like a judgmental thing, but just in the fact that statistically it's like a minority. Like, I don't know if these statistics still apply, but in the United States, I think it's like 10% of the population are gay, and of that gay population, 10% are lesbian. So it's a minority. It's a minority. You know, it's not your whatever heteronormative type situation. So, yeah, and the other thing is because there's Ketu there, there may be separation, and Mercury's there, there's communication, and a lot of this is going through Stravana. So I think that it might be that this is more of like a, again, more of a like a communication is going on, more communicating than I think physical, is what I'm guessing here for a lot of people. But again, it depends on what planet you're running and where these things are in your chart and that sort of thing. But, again, I think something's brewing there that's out of the norm, out of yeah. February 18th, Mars moves into Shravana. So again, we're moving into that storytelling nakshatra, education, and oral communication. So again, a beginning of a new language. If you're just in and of itself, without the Mars, without the Ketu, without the Mercury, Mars and Shravana could be like, hearing a new story, beginning a new language, beginning a new study of oral tradition, that sort of thing. And Venus moves into Shravana like the next day. So now we're getting the humanities, Mars and Venus there. And again, Mars and Venus and Shravana, love story. That's like, and then when you add the Mercury and Ketu in the mix, in a foreign place, like maybe you meet, when you're traveling, because Mercury's traveling, Ketu's a foreign, foreignness or different, unusual place or something. Or maybe you're just like in an unusual place, like maybe you, I don't know, just even for the day or something, went somewhere unusual in your usual daily, regarding your daily routines and stuff like that. And that's where you meet this unusual person that you might not have come across otherwise. Um, yeah, or, again, it could also be like a foreign language. Maybe you guys speak a foreign language. That's what you have in common here. Okay, so and then 19th through 24th of February, Venus, Mars, planetary war. So, okay, so there's going to be some stress and strain here with this love story, if there is one. And this could be arguing with a loved one. And again, it could be about like you each have a different side of the story because this is happening in Shravana. This could also be a clash with tradition in art and culture. Um, so this might be, again, if this is a partner who's very different from you, because again, when you have Venus, especially in conjoined with Rahu and Ketu, that was often, again, if you're thinking back about like traditional Jyotish, and because there's so much about like synastry, right? Like matching charts in terms of like finding an appropriate marriage partner or whatever. Um, um, because in that tradition, typically you're looking for somebody who's not different, right? Because somebody who's different is going to like upset the apple cart, the long-standing tradition of Indian culture. Like you're not wanting to bring in somebody who's going to upset the family structure and the family traditions and routines and all this kind of stuff. You want somebody who's going to pretty much fit in and go with the flow. So Venus with K2, I mean, this is somebody who's going to be, um, because K2 is also like Mars, so it's almost like having two Mars, but K2's even got more of a twist. So it might seem like this could be that like this falling out is that all of a sudden, like, because this person's so different, like there's a big clash that comes out, in terms of like maybe you're introducing them to your friends or family or something. And they're like, whoa, what's this? This is not what we're used to. Um, it could also be that like the differences sort of come up and you're like, whoa, how do we even handle this? Because they see things so differently than you do. Um, so what's interesting though, it could also be that because you have Venus there, so compassion is a planet that represents compassion, gentleness, that sort of thing. And when you have Mars with K2, it's like a hyper masculine, situation. And then with the K2, you have this kind of unusual twist to it all. I mean, I could see that as like toxic masculinity. You know? Um, yeah. Luckily, K2 and Mars are not at the same degree, but they will become at the same. No, actually, Mercury leaves Capricorn before Mars and K2 are on the same degree, which is good because that might be like a complete blowout, frankly. Because when Mercury or when Mars crossed K2 in October, that's when things hit the fan in terms of Israel getting bombed by Hamas and then that whole thing starting up. So you can see like that's a very when you have Mars and K2 together, that can be a very explosive situation. So again, luckily Mercury's moving out of this before K2 and Mars are in the same degree. Otherwise, K2 would have an exact aspect on Mars, and there's even more likelihood that this would be fairly explosive. Okay, so again, it might be the end of the love story at that point. Again, depending on what planet you're running and your own chart, that sort of thing. But again, there's this, again, when somebody comes in besides the actual developing of a relationship, when somebody comes into your life in that capacity, and like especially a romantic capacity, there's that external balancing of male and female energy. And so Venus representing compassion and gentleness and sociability and diplomacy, that's actually going to be the winner in this planetary war. So that kind of compassion and gentleness is what's going to win over this potential toxic masculinity situation. Yeah. Which is, again, maybe surprising because there's so much of this like male and, the Mars K2. I mean, that's a pretty intense energy there. Okay, and then February 27th, Mars has an exact aspect on Jupiter. So again, new initiatives in oral communication, speech publication. Could very well be. All right. Okay, so here's another chart. And this is of Amadeus Mozart. And part of the reason why it shows this chart was that you can see he's got this Saturn, Sun, Mercury situation going on. Saturn and Mercury combust. The three of these planets, though, are in Capricorn, which is still ruled by Sagittarius, Saturn, instead of Aquarius. But you have this like pretty strong combination here. Yeah, and you can see he was born 27th of January, 1756. So the charts, that I'm pulling that have a similar sky pattern, are going to be born close to this time of the year. And the thing is, like with Sun, the Sun is going to be this time of the year. Sun is always rolling through Capricorn and Aquarius. And then the thing is, Mercury and Venus are never far away from the sun because they're so close to the sun. So at most, Mercury and Venus are only a constellation away. They're never more than a constellation away from the sun. Um, and the thing is that, again, if you have Sun, Mercury, Venus all kind of traveling sort of like a pack through this area of the sky, and they're going through nakshatras like Shravana and Dhanishta. Sun represents career, Mercury represents writing and speech, Venus represents the arts. Like you're going to get a number of people who are either professional artists or at least interested in the arts just because Sun and Mercury and Venus are rolling through this area of the sky. So here's another example. So he was born, at least what's available on the internet, is he was born at 8 o'clock in the evening in Salzburg, Austria. It says that this is from a birth chart, but I don't know. For some reason, when I see times like exactly 8 o'clock, I don't really trust them, especially when it was that long ago. So we are actually looking at his Chandra Lagna, not his Udaya Lagna. Okay, so this is his moon rising chart. If you do take this 8 o'clock time as its true time of birth, then that would give you a Lagna Nakshatra in Purva Falguni, which is all about enjoyment and the finer things of life, which is what his, especially his life was all about, like providing entertainment and music and stuff. The time frame to have a Lagna Nakshatra would have been 7:12 in the evening to 8:24. So if his true birth time was in that range, then his Lagna Nakshatra would be Purva Falguni. So it's very possible he did have this. The moon nakshatra was most likely Jesta in Scorpio. which has this energy of like being elder or master and also protective energy. And the moon was in that nakshatra from 2:18 a.m. till midnight. So again, he very probably had a moon in Jesta. Okay, the day lord was Mars. The hora lord may be Saturn, again, depending on when exactly. But if he was born between, was it 7:37 and 8:32 in the evening, then the hora lord would be Saturn. Okay. The birth dasha at this, again, I took this 8 o'clock time just to give us some time frame, was Mercury, Jupiter, Sun, Mercury. Now, already, okay, so Mars, so again, if we're looking at this big conglomeration of Saturn, Sun, Mercury, look, and it's aspected by Mars and Jupiter. So we have a day lord Mars, we have the hora lord Saturn probably, and then the dasha Mercury, Jupiter, Sun. These are all the planets in his third house. Then in his dasha sequence, so he went through Mercury, then Venus, Ketu, Sun. Okay, and the Sun he started at age 30, and he only lived to age 35. Okay. So you can see that not only was like the day lord, hour lord, birth dasha planets, and that was this whole third house. So clearly that's important for him. But the other thing is that all the planets in his chart are in signs of Mercury, Saturn, Sun, which are again this, Mercury, Saturn, Sun. This. So again, this third house is massive for him. Okay. It was always active. Okay. So, okay, let's start here. So the analysis, Chandra Lagna, so Scorpio, Vrishika, fixed water sign, Stirajal, very set in his ways, very emotional person. The moon was in Jesta. So again, this protection energy, master energy. And the moon in this Chandra Lagna is lord of his ninth house of father and government. And he was very much, I mean, his father basically completely, he was like his, what do they call it? He was like his manager, his like talent manager and teacher, actually, because he was already composing at the age of 5 or something like that. I mean, just a prodigy, yeah. And his father was, I think, also was a violinist in the town symphony or something. So his father was a professional musician, but he just really developed, and they toured all over Europe, you know, even as a young kid. Anyway, so there's that, yeah. And then the Lugnatia from this Chandra Lugna is Mars. Mars is retrograde. There's some strength there. But it's in the, eighth house. So there's some difficulties here. And it's also an Ardra. So Ardra is symbolized by like a storm cloud or teardrop. So sadness, and this is a stormy guy. And Scorpios are already like fairly intense people because they're ruled by Mars, and they have intense emotions. So, yeah. And the Mars in the eighth house, that's a moksha sthana. So he was looking for freedom. Moksha is freedom. And also, the eighth house here is deep psychology and esoterica. At some point, he became a Freemason, which is some sort of secret society. I mean, I've seen other people when they've been involved in things like the Church of Scientology, which is kind of this hidden, a little bit hidden, with hidden practices and hidden society, especially down in California. A lot of celebrities are part of that. They often have placements in the eighth house. Research, and the research for him is like redoing different notes and, configurations of notes and stuff. And he was a stormy guy. And his, very emotional, heart tugging, and even like his one famous song that I don't think he completed before he died was Requiem, right? It's all about like passing on and stuff. He does have what I would consider a Kala Sarpa yoga here. You can see this dotted gray line across the board here. The only planet on one side of it is Mars. So I would take that as a Kala Sarpa. So he was quite ambitious. Like he actually got a position, I think, with the in his town for some kind of a musician role, and he bailed on that and wanted to do something more. So He just didn't stay put where he was, even though there was some success where he was. Um, so anyway, yeah, tugging on your heartstrings. That's this guy, which is what his music did, I think. So the second house, so if we start going around, the second lord is Jupiter and Chitra, so that's structure. And then aspected by Mars. So especially his childhood was very up and down, and I think fairly sad for him. Um, I think because he was already on the road traveling as a teenager, and that was very up and down. Like they never knew how much money they were going to make. They never knew when they were next. And this is again, there's no phones or email, text, anything. It was really a true adventure, for him to be living that way, traveling from like London to Austria to Italy. Um, at that time, it was very precarious. He had, I think, 6 or 7 siblings, and only one or two of them survived. He had 5 siblings. I think he passed away. I mean, this is a very precarious time. Yeah. So, and then he's traveling all over Europe, and so yeah. And then the other thing, Mars. I think Mars. Was it Mars or Jupiter? I forget. Either Mars or Jupiter. I forget which one. But you can see he's got Mars and Jupiter related to both his second house of savings as well as his 11th house of income. I forget which one. Either Mars or Jupiter is both his aviyogi and his duplicate yogi. So aviyogi is the planet that represents like dearth in somebody's life, financial dearth, and the duplicate yogi is a planet that can indicate wealth. So what I'm seeing here is that his second house was a roller coaster, with money, with family. And this is also somebody who talks fast and energetically with this Mars here. And again, somebody who will pull on your heartstrings. Okay, then the third house here, this massive third house. So you have this Swa Saturn in its own sign. So a very practical, tangible third house. And again, the third house, if the second house is oral communication, the third house is, well, today mostly written communication, but speaking through your body. So speaking through some sort of physical means as opposed to a oral means. And for him, this was primarily the piano. So you can see all of this, and this massive Saturn and Capricorn. This is going to be traditional classical communication. Um, what else? You have Jupiter and Mars here, and so that's a lot of enthusiasm. You have the two Pitta planets, fire planets here, a lot of action, and Jupiter is expansion, and Jupiter is like publication. I mean, this guy had, don't quote me on it, I think something like 800 musical pieces that he wrote. And again, he passed away at like the age of 35. So even if he started at the age of 5, that's 30 years. I mean, that's a lot. That's a very prodigious, um, that's a lot of physical communication there. So a lot of energy, a lot of focus. This is all the third house structure, detail and precision, dexterity with the Mercury there. Because again, the third house is the natural zodiac is Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. So again, Mercury medically indicates things like hands and arms. So he's using, all this dexterity, this like fast finger movement, like his nervous system is like on fire. Intense rapid physical communication, classic tradition, listening, education, because he has two education planets, Mercury and Jupiter. And the third house again, career-wise, often indicates things like the arts, but also specifically artisans. So, yeah, prolific publishing, and again, the two leadership planets, Sun and Mars, are both here. And then the loss of siblings. He lost like 5 siblings because the third house is also the house of siblings. So again, this third house for this guy was just, on fire. And again, all these planets were active. You can see, like, again, day lord, hour lord, probably birth to Shah sequence and all that. Then you can see in his Shah sequence, he also, after Mercury period, he went through Venus and Ketu. which you can see in the fourth house. So the fourth house, I think, is also fairly important for him. Um, so Venus, the arts, K2, unusualness. Like we had the K2 in the fourth house for Katrin Jokobsdottir. So unusual art here. The Lord of the fourth house is Saturn, which is Swa, so that's going to be strong. Venus has Digbala directional strength in the fourth house. Venus is also in Shatabisha, that nakshatra representing um, diseases that are difficult to heal, that sort of thing. And he actually passed away in his, I think it was a Venus Antara, so sub period, I think for him. Yeah, because I think he passed away in Sun period, but it was Sun Venus when he passed. So this Venus was active. The other thing is this K2 is in Purva Bhardapada, which is the front legs of a funeral pyre. So when he went through his Venus period, sub period, this house got activated. And again, these two placements here with Shatabisha and Purva Bhardapada, especially K2, it's like an explosive death. I'm sorry, this is kind of harsh, but that's sort of what it is. Kind of an explosive death and mysterious causes, diseases that are difficult to cure or diagnose and stuff. And apparently, they still don't know what he died of. Like it was some sort of sudden infection or something with swelling and I think vomiting and I don't know what else. And so they still don't exactly know what he died of after all these years. And so again, that's this Venus K2 thing that happened, energy for him. This Venus K2 could also represent like loss of a beloved female through illness, like maybe mom or spouse. I don't have information about that, so I don't know. Foreign, unusual twist on traditional art because of the K2 there. The other thing is that the family line, so the fourth house is the family line. This is going to be a musical family and actually a lot of traveling as well because this K2 here is going to be like disruptions in home. So again, if he's always on the road for most of his life, trying to pick up gigs all over Europe, that's not a very settled life, especially for a kid. And then eventually, I think he ended up in Vienna for most part of his life. Um, Fifth house. Okay, so Jupiter aspecting into its own house. I mean, a lot of performances. The fifth house is in the natural zodiac zodiac is ruled by Leo, and Leo represents like a stage theater performance. Yeah. Um, Also, many children. He had six, because Jupiter is the planet, the karaka, the symbol for children. And with Jupiter aspecting into the fifth house of children, it's me a lot of kids, especially as a water sign. Water signs tend to have more children, generally, again, depending on the chart. But that's one thing to consider with like progeny and stuff like that. Because the water element is just more hospitable for supporting growth in utero. Okay, and then the seventh house, aspected by Jupiter, and the seventh lord is Venus. So Jupiter and Venus, all about the seventh house and independent business and the arts. The eighth house here, we have Mars and Ardra, again, deep sadness. The 10th house, um, Rahu is in Purva Falguni, I mentioned, aspected by Venus. So again, enjoying finer things of life and enjoying life and the arts. Also, Rahu with ambition, that's there. And so there's ambition as a court artist because the 10th house here is ruled by Leo. So Leo is ruled by the sun. So court. And Leo, as I mentioned, the natural zodiac of the fifth house is the natural constellation of the fifth house. But we have Leo here. So it's a public performance type of career. There is ambition to be a court artist. And then the 11th house I mentioned with that Jupiter and Mars related to the 11th house, a roller coaster in social and financial life, which, he used to get in arguments with this kind of profile. He's somebody who's going to talk fast and slick and and get into arguments and, be ambitious and, be a genius. I mean, it's hard to keep that contained, right? So that's Mozart. All right, so the moon in February, on the 9th of February, there's a new moon in Capricorn Magha. So we have more energy in Capricorn, a lot of Capricorn energy this month, and that's going to be in Dhanashta, so that drumbeat energy. Again, a Capricorn movable earth sign, Shar Prithvi, so a lot of action, practical action. The moon in Capricorn is neutral. So this is about grounding the mind and emotions, that sort of thing, and finding rhythm. And this could even specifically be, especially because we have Venus there and Mars. Venus is the earth. Mars is like physical action, muscles and stuff. This could be even something like, through music and dance, like maybe starting even a music class or dance class or something. Um, then the 24th, we have a full moon in Leo, Simha, Magha, a nakshatra, which is symbolized by a throne. And again, Magha is the star of Regulus, so it's the heart of the lion. And this is Indian culture where they believe that ancestors reside after they've passed on. So there may be this kind of reminiscing about people who've passed, especially females. There can be some emotional energy there. Leo is a fixed fire sign, so very strong, steady, active planet. Moon is a friend. Leo is a friend sign for moon, so that supports the moon. But again, when you have full moon on the throne, what I'm saying here is like blossoming queen energy. Um, Potentially, especially with this, again, in the background, there was this planetary war between Venus and this potentially toxic masculinity Mars K2 situation. So this could be, a shift in power dynamics, men and women. Reminiscing about a female ancestor, because again, the moon is all about emotions and that sort of intuition, also psychic energy, I would even say. So there might be something going on there, and also feeling like you're in the spotlight or on a stage, because again, we're talking about Leo here. So yeah, and then I always do individual interpretation videos on new and full moon, so those will be coming out later in the month. Then we have the outer planets, the slow-moving planets, so Jupiter, Guru, Saturn, Shani, Rahu, Ketu. So the 1st through 19th, again, you're going to get this K2 aspecting 5 and 9 houses away because of the placement of position of Mercury. So I would expect more, unusual changes or unexpected changes in whatever Capricorn and Taurus represent in your chart, because that's where K2 is going to be aspecting. And then February 3rd, Jupiter just moved into Bharani nakshatra, so birthing new projects, because again, Bharani is symbolized by a womb. So it's all about new cycles, birth and death, and Jupiter's there. So Jupiter's a great benefic. So this is more about starting new projects, I would say, than ending projects. But there's always like a balance there, right? To start something new, sometimes you have to let something else go. And then 11th of February, Saturn goes combust, so we won't see Saturn, which may seem like a relief, because for about a month, Saturn will not be slowing things down on the physical plane so much. So you might see some of these external obstacles that seem insurmountable, just running up against the same walls. You might see again for that month that the obstacles are temporarily lifted. But internally, there may be more anxiousness and skepticism, maybe being more serious and organized and stuff. Maybe the serious and organized part is just, you actually see some opening that you can move through and take advantage of that, kind of moment in time. But there can also be more anxiety and skepticism because you've been, it's like that, what is it? What do they call it? What do they call it? The word's not coming to me right now, but basically it's like, learned inefficiency. No, basically, when you keep coming up against the idea is that when you keep coming up against obstacle after obstacles, it kind of you start to kind of internalize that and kind of expect that in experience, and it makes you less likely to even try. Like, oh, learned helplessness. That's what it is. Learned helplessness. So even if again, if you've been up against Saturn and Saturn has been intense like for a good year now, in Aquarius, well, it's been intense for a few years, but now it's like in Shatabisha. So not only an intense constellation, but an intense nakshatra. Even if, temporarily things, create some room to move and shift about the cabin, um, you may not feel like it. You may not be up for it because you've been sort of in this holding pattern for so long that you kind of lost your confidence or mojo or, oomph or enthusiasm or excitement or whatever. So it might be a little bit of anticlimactic here. Even though it's like, woo, freedom, you could be that. But I think internally there's still going to be obstacles that have been created that are hard to get over. It may even intensify. Like you might not trust that this month long, at least, lift of the really intense Saturnian energies. Then on February 19th, this is when Saturn, I mentioned in the beginning, Saturn and Jupiter are at almost the same degree right now, which is going to put even more of a drag on Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of like optimism and charity and that sort of thing. And Saturn's like slowness and obstacles and delays. So, and it's been, I'm sorry about that. There might be a skip in the recording because I pushed a button and then it kind of took me to another uh, screen really fast. And I didn't mean to do that, so I had to kind of back up. Anyway, yeah, so Saturn has been, just creating this drag on Jupiter for not since last January. That's when Saturn switched into Aquarius, but Jupiter switched into Aries last April. So, that's been quite a drag. So there's been like a slowness in terms of growth and optimism, And so because of that, and that's the thing that was Jupiter switching signs. So not only is Jupiter, starting to pull away from Saturn in terms of it being in the same degree, but, I think it's 1st of May, Jupiter's switching signs. So then it's going to be completely free of Saturn. So in a way, it's almost like this month coming up when Saturn goes combust, because it goes combust February 11th. And I think that lasts through the middle of March. It's almost like a glimpse of what the future holds once Jupiter is finally like moved on to another sign. So that's a chance to actually kind of do some recon, and fix and heal some of the things that, have probably been kind of lost, even like your own enthusiasm and stuff like that, to kind of, bolster that a bit. And I mean, again, Saturn's going to leave combustion in mid-March, and you're still going to have a good, what is it, month, 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks of Saturn on Jupiter, but then Saturn's going to switch signs. So Jupiter's going to be out of the grip of Saturn, but that's your last, Jupiter is only in each sign for a year. So it's going to take 12 years for Jupiter to come back to Aries. So even if you're feeling like tired, haggard, from like this like Saturn Jupiter situation for whatever the last almost year now. This is your chance to at least get some pure Jupiterian, goodness to come through in Aries. Yeah. So uh and like, make the most of the situation, whatever time you do have. And then the 27th of February, I already mentioned Mars, there's an exact aspect on Jupiter. So again, new oral communication, speech publication. All right, so I have a mystery chart here. Go through. Um, yeah, but you can see what do we have here? We have Mercury, Sun, Jupiter in Capricorn. So a lot of Capricorn energy here. Um, and you do have Venus and Mars together, not in Capricorn, but in uh, Pisces. But you can see they're in the same degree. So they're at war. So we have a Venus Mars war here. We have Rahu Ketu in Aries and Libra as it currently is. And what else? Yeah, so there's some similarities here. All right, so let's look at this chart. I'll wait for the big reveal at the end, but let's just go through it and start to piece together what this might be. So the time of this chart is January 29th, 1985, 6:55 a.m. in Los Angeles, California, USA. Okay. Now the lugna, this lugna would be correct from in the time frame of 6:01 a.m. to 7:39 a.m. So it's right kind of in the middle of this lugna. So I think we can assume this lugna is correct. Okay. Now the lugna nakshatra is Shravana. And we talked a lot about Shravana so far, right? Listening, education, oral tradition. Yeah. Okay. So even from what we've been talking about, and this chart, you might guess that this is like an artist of some kind, especially like a musician. Okay. The moon nakshatra, I'm already giving too much away, I think. I'm not good at waiting for the big reveals, so I might like spill it before we get too far here. But let's see. Then we have the moon nakshatra. This is in Bharani, so life, death, rebirth, and you can see the moon is here in the fourth house, which creates a karka. So there's some issues here with the moon. It also has digbala, so there's strength, but also the karka. So there could be issues with mom. There could be issues with public. There could be issues with nourishment. These are all things. Uh, Issues with the public. These are all things that the moon represents. And the moon is with Rahu. So, and you can see literally Rahu. That's an interesting context here. Rahu, you can see, is at 29 degrees 59 seconds. Literally, Rahu just switched signs this same morning at 1:14 a.m. So this is a very unstable Rahu here. And like literally just a few hours before, it was in Taurus. So a brand new Rahu in the sign of Aries here. Okay. And moon, again, Rahu on its own, or Ketu also, can represent things like mental health issues. And you have the moon here. So mental health issues, problems with the public, also problems with the foreign public. Rahu can represent foreign things. And Rahu is in Revati. So Revati is a nakshatra that indicates things like hospitality and travel. So again, we're doubling up on, there's confluence here in terms of, this foreign energy that Rahu brings. So, let's see, the day lord is Mars and the hora lord is Mars. Okay, so we have a lot of Mars energy here. Leadership and initiative. Yeah, it's, doing things in a new way, going against the grain. And the hora lord, this time is correct in the time frame in the span of 6:52. So we're close here with the hora lord, and 7:51. So, but again, Mars, yeah. Then the birth dasha, Venus, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn. So Venus, Jupiter, Venus, just that. The two great benefics. Venus is the arts. Jupiter is like charity. Venus is sociability, yeah. And then we have Saturn. So we have social compassion. And then Saturn is up here in the 11th house of groups and money. Yeah. So more context here. I mentioned just like hours before this moment in time, Rahu Ketu switch signs. Also, like there's a lot. This is a very like precarious point in time because Mercury and Jupiter are going into war January 30th. So the next day, as you can see, Mercury and Jupiter almost in the same sign. They're going at it the next day. So you can see like there was like just this brief, it's kind of like what I was talking about with like Saturn going combust for a month, and you might be like, well, what's the use? Like I'm just tired, fighting the Saturn, dragging on Jupiter, for the last year. But again, just like in this chart, like even if you get the right little window, even if it's like an hour or something like that, you can bring uh, sometimes amazing things through. Okay, when you get the energies right here. So yeah. So again, Mercury and Jupiter the next year going into war, which would not be fantastic. That would bring potentially, again, if this is somebody's chart, somebody who's very argumentative. Yeah. And let's see, Jupiter just left combustion. So Jupiter was, you can see Jupiter's up here in the Jupiter is in the Lagna here. Mercury and Jupiter in the Lagna, they both have Digbala, directional strength. That makes them strong, but Jupiter is debilitated because it's in Capricorn. So Jupiter is an exaggerated condition, we would say. Both good and bad. Yeah. And the thing is, Jupiter was also combust. So not only was debilitated, but combust. So, that's a pretty, talk about drag on Jupiter. And you have Saturn aspecting onto Jupiter. I mean, you think Saturn right now on Jupiter is like a tough haul. Like this is even worse than that. It's almost like Jupiter's completely toast, here. Jupiter just left combustion 15:03 p.m. So within not even 24 hours, it's 14 hours, I guess, 14 hours before Jupiter left combustion. I mean, that's like, woo, cutting it close, right? So, and then Mercury enters combustion. So as if we didn't, the Mercury Jupiter war is on the, just, looming over the edge here. Mercury enters combustion. It just did entered combustion at 5:36 a.m. So Jupiter came out of combustion a few hours before, and Mercury just went into combustion like an hour and 20 minutes or so before this moment in time. That's a lot of shifting, I mean, you almost have like two graha yuddhas, planetary wars in this chart also. So that's a lot of shuffling. That's a lot of, I mean, the thing that was here, I mean, luckily the thing is that Mercury and Jupiter, the two wars, Mercury and Jupiter here, I would probably, I don't know, Mercury could go either way. You might, is it benefic? Is it malefic? Well, you've got Jupiter there, but Jupiter's debilitated and it was combust. And then you have Sun and Saturn on it. So Mercury you might see as a malefic. I think it could swing either way, especially with it being combust. That doesn't help. Um, and then Venus and Mars. I mean, at least the planetary wars with like Jupiter's the one benefic and Venus. So at least there's a big benefic in both of these planetary wars. Um, that will help. That'll provide a little bit of cushion. Um, but yeah, you can see there's a lot going on here. I mean, with the moon and Rahu, that's not easy. Venus and Mars and planetary war, that's not easy. Jupiter combust, debilitated, just out of that. Mercury just went combust. Rahu Ketu just shifted, and then Saturn is aspected, onto this Mercury Jupiter Sun mix. This is like whoa, living on the edge. Okay, so let's start at the top and start moving around the chart. So we have again Capricorn, Makara, Lug, or at least Lugna. So again, I'm assuming this is the right Lugna. Even if it's not the right Lugna, we can use this as a Surya Lugna. So either way, there's some protection there that we're, in terms of making sure that we're looking at the right energy. Um, so again, very practical but very active energies here. Sun is the ascendant is in Shravana. Sun is also in Shravana. So there's a leadership energy here. Yeah, and this is like something very prominent, right? Like king and president type energy. Let's see. You have this combust Digbala Mercury, so you have an exaggerated Mercury. You have Jupiter debilitated, just out of combustion. Jupiter, so you have two exaggerated planets here, about to go into planetary war the next day. Mercury and Jupiter, though, happen to be in Uttarashada, so piercing, powerful victory. So even though this is a precarious moment, already you can see that there is probably great success here. And again, Mercury and Jupiter, what do they represent? They represent education, they represent speech, they represent communication, they represent media. Yeah, he's trying to get the picture here. So whatever this was, and the other thing is this Saturn. Okay, so this Saturn, potentially is creating drag on this whole thing. But which nakshatra is Saturn in? Saturn's in the nakshatra of Anuradha, which is all about victory through building bridges. So just with what I've shared so far, what do you think? whatever this was very successful in bringing people together in a very precarious time. Okay, so let's keep going though. La 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 la. Okay, so and Saturn is the lord of the first house, so that brings even more of this like let's bring people together energy. And the second house, so Saturn's in the 11th house of income, and Saturn's the lord of the second house uh, of savings and family and stuff like that. So long-term income and money. That's what we're looking at here. So, right, we've got music, we've got leadership, we've got building bridges, we've got long-term money. Okay, so and then this I have in this big what did I put here? I don't remember why I circled Jupiter. It might come back to me. I circled Sun and Ascendant here because you can see they're in the same degree. So what that means is the Sun is going to travel through all the amshas or most of the amshas. Sun is going to be in the top of all those amshas, the sub charts, the divisional charts. And I looked at it. Actually, Sun is in the lugna of all the divisional charts, at least up to the D30. So leadership, presidential, and again, Sun is a sattvic energy. Jupiter is also sattvic. So this is a pretty, high-minded thing, endeavor, whatever, or person, whatever this is. And then this big yellow circle, this qualifies as a pravraja yoga. So life focus, so Sun, Mercury, Jupiter, because they're all 3 planets in a positive house. And I would say from this that the strongest planet, even though Jupiter and Mercury have digbala, Jupiter's debilitated, just kind of combustion. Mercury combusts. It's a friend sign for Mercury. It's not a friend sign for Jupiter. But these two planets are, basically the sun is overshadowing literally Mercury and Jupiter. So of these 3 planets, I would actually probably take Sun as the strongest planet. And again, if you watch my Pravraja yoga, when you have the sun, as opposed to one of the charts I talked about, when the Pravraja yoga, I think it was the 29th of February, that chart, the last day of the month we looked at, where the Pravraja yoga was ruled by Saturn, which is like a hardcore, like off the grid type life focus. The sun, when the sun is the strongest planet, that's like a regal, like leader of leaders type energy. Like actually the what is it? Pope Francis, if you remember when I went through Pope Francis's chart, he has what did he have? Sun, Mercury, Jupiter, and something else. He had those 3 planets and I think another one in Sagittarius. So the 2 strongest planets I think for him were Sun and Jupiter. And those are actually, if you're going to have a Raja Yoga, like Jupiter's a very cushy type, luxurious type life focus, which, he's the Pope surrounded by all this wealth. And then you had the Sun, and I think you had Mars aspecting there. So we had the leadership planet. So, he's a leader of leaders. So that's what you're getting here is like a leader of leaders type energy, an example to follow. Okay. Okay, so if we put this all together, a lot of strength and victory, because you also have Saturn aspecting to its own sign. That's going to bring strength here, especially this Anuradha nakshatra energy. I mean, that's going to be nice. Even though it is that. So there are going to be delays and obstacles, but, there's going to be some magic here too. You can see that coming. A lot of strength and victory, piercing, like just out of the blue, bringing people together, leadership of communication, education, media, speech. I mentioned the sun through the amshas, Saturn. Oh, and there's also there's a clear kala sarpa yoga here. All the planets are on one side of Rahu Ketu, so this clearly also has a lot of ambition energy in the chart. Then the second house, second lord is Saturn. Again, successful, enduring, oral communications. That's the second house. And money, close-knit circle, bringing people together. Rah, rah, rah. Okay, and then the third house, we have Venus, which is exalted. That's great. That's going to be very strong. Mars, and both of them are in Purva Bhardrapada, though. So that is again the symbolized that nakshatra symbolized by the front legs of a funeral pyre. So there's some, death here. And the third house can represent, you have a karako bhava nasha here with Mars. So issues with siblings, brothers specifically, because Mars is the masculine energy, Venus is the feminine energy. It could also, the third house also represents neighbors. Yeah. So they're in planetary war. That's going to destabilize them. So again, there is some shuffling that's going on in this person, process, or whatever. There were some arguments, and it looks like arguments over like artistic, some sort of artistic, because again, the third house represents the arts, and you have Venus exalted there. So some sort of artistic endeavor, some arguments here. Um, and also Venus versus Mars, heart versus action, feeling versus action. Yeah, so literally you could have siblings, neighbors, trouble, dying, artistic initiative, because again, art's the Venus and Mars is the initiative here. Fourth house, I mentioned a little bit. We have a Karko Bhavanasha with the moon as well, so trouble with things of the moon, mom, home, food, literally. But it also has Digbala. So the moon is also exaggerated because so you can see like all the planets here. It's like living on the edge. I mean, probably the most stable planets are Saturn and Jupiter because Mercury's in flux, Jupiter's in flux, Venus and Mars are in flux, Moon is challenged, Rahu, Ketu just shifted. I mean, it's like this is yeah. So this is like a lucky moment in time, just barely. um, Rahu is in Krittika. Oh no, wait. Is it? Did I say Rahu? I said Revati. I misspoke. So Rahu is actually a Krittika nakshatra because it's coming from the other side. And it's not Revati. I was thinking about Pisces. Sorry, I was thinking about the wrong constellation. Sorry. Rahu is in Krittika nakshatra. So sorry about that. So Krittika nakshatra is it's a dual energy. So as if there's not enough dualness, and like, back and forth energy in this chart. So Kartikeya is the celestial commander in chief. And so there's a lot of fighting energy with Kritika, but it's a dual nakshatra. There's also this energy of like kind of like a foster mother, because Kartikeya was raised, nurtured by various foster mothers. So a lot of times when you hear about Kritika, you don't hear about the nurturing foster mother energy, but it's there. So that's the thing is because you have this troubled mother and you have this Rahu, it's almost like a foreign or unusual adoptive or foster mother energy here, or foreign support. Yeah. Yeah. And there's also this fighting energy. So there's this like, again, strong initiative to fight, but fight and nurture. Yeah. Um, And then the fourth lord is this Mars here. So again, we're bringing this Martian energy. So this fourth house is destabilized because Mars is destabilized through planetary war. And Mars again is in Purva. So there could be some dire situation that's looking to be helped here. Then the fifth house, we have Jupiter aspecting. So publication. Again, the fifth house is also performances. Since the natural zodiac, fifth house is ruled by Leo. And you have Saturn here. So Jupiter's in Uttarashadra, victory. Saturn's in Anurata, victory through forming coalitions, alliance. So this performance, if it is a performance, or at least the mental space, this is the intellect. Also, the thought here as of a great victory, long-lasting victory as well. Uh, yeah. So what did I write here? So hopeful creative performance with obstacles that are overcome. So whatever obstacles there may be, there's still a success here. The sixth house We have Mars aspecting into the fourth house, the sixth house here. Sixth house represents acute illnesses, acute situations, enemies, siblings, that sort of thing. So this could be again like a sibling that's in dire situation that needs some help. And the seventh house, we have aspected by Saturn, the combust Mercury, and this at least this time Jupiter is going to be exalted. So that's kind of nice because luckily Jupiter just came out of combustion. So actually, the seventh house here is going to be very strong. So if this is a creative endeavor or independent business or something like that, we're looking at a very successful enterprise. And again, because the Sun is in Shravana, Mercury and Jupiter are in Uttarashadra, we're looking at successful oral communication. Yeah. So what's the big reveal? So I was watching this movie. You probably know I like to watch movies if you watch my videos. So I was watching this new movie that's on Netflix. It's called The Greatest Moment in Pop. And what the movie is about is the time and the process of recording the song We Are the World that was done. Uh, well, the date, if you look on the internet, the date of the recording is, if you just look on the internet, is the 28th of January, 1985. But if you watch the movie, luckily in the movie, they kept showing shots of the time clock. So I was watching that. As an astrologer, I'm like, what's the last minute that they did the recording? So anyway, they started the recording on January 28th at I believe 10:03 or 10:33, but they didn't finish the recording until about 6:55. So that's the time I used here. And they'd said, and that was the last time clock that they flashed. And then they said take, and then they said everybody was out of the studio by 8 o'clock. So I figured this was the closest time. So it's kind of like, it's like when is the baby born? When the first contraction happens, like when you enter the birthing room with the doctor, or is the birth time when the baby emerges and kind of breathes their first breath on their own? So I took this time and I think it works really well. Um, anyway, and if you don't know the song We Are the World, it was written by Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie. And this song was particularly important and innovative because there was another song I think done in the UK. It was called, I don't know if it was called Band Aid, but there were a bunch of popular musicians in the UK who got together and sang a song about Christmas, and that was supposed to be for charity. The money raised from that song was for charity. And so was it Al Jarreau? No, not Al Jarreau. Harry Belafonte, who's a famous singer in the United States, got the idea that maybe we could do something like that and help Ethiopia because Ethiopia was going through a major famine at this time in about 1985. And so he would hear reports on the news, but just felt like helpless to do anything. And then he got this idea from the Band Aid group or whatever. And I think this song came out within like 2 or 3 months of the Christmas song. Yeah, because this is January. I think it was just a few weeks or a couple months after the UK song. And this song brought together the other thing that was interesting, it was like it happened like just really fast. Like I guess Quincy Jones stepped in, he was a great music producer or whatever, and he was, legendary in the field. And he contacted Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie to write the song. And I think they had 3 weeks to do it. And then the other thing is that what their thought was is they wanted to bring together again all these pop artists, music pop artists in the United States. They're like, how do we do this? Because it usually takes months, especially before like email, before email and texting and all this kind of stuff. How do we bring all these people together, at one time very quickly? And the thing is, on January 28th was the American Music Awards or some sort of music award program that Lionel Richie was hosting. And so there, all these artists a bunch of artists were in LA anyway. So that was sort of a critical mass. And then I think they invited like, I don't know, they ended up having 45 artists. So Michael Jackson, Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder, who else? Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Diane Warwick, Diane Ross, Cyndi Lauper. I mean, like major, people at the time. Al Jarreau. I mean, it was just like a long, I mean, like a dream list of, top artists in the country. They all managed to they get 45 of these people in the same room. They had to all keep it undercover so that it wouldn't leak, and they get mobbed by, the press or whatever. They started recording at like 10:30 on the 28th. And the thing is like, they had to write the song so fast. So Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie wrote the song, and then in the middle of all this, like, because they're all like, famous artists or whatever, like at some point I think Stevie Wonder said, "Oh, why don't we sing, something something," like start including some Swahili, words or something into the song. And then there was like this argument about, well, they don't speak Swahili in Ethiopia, and let's keep it simple. And somebody, I think Waylon Jennings, like one of the country artists, says, "Well, I don't speak Swahili," and they walked out. Like what is this? When you have this many famous people, who are used to getting their way, probably most of the time, I'm guessing, it wasn't like entirely smooth sailing, but it was sort of a miracle that when they got all these people in the same place, and they did within a few hours, like from 10, if we say conservatively, they started at 10 o'clock in the evening on January 28th, and they were done, by 8 o'clock in the morning the next day. That's what, 10 hours? So they cranked the song out. And the thing is, this song was so popular, it's to this day the ninth best selling physical single in the world. It made the first position in a bunch of, besides the United States, a bunch of countries like I think New Zealand, Australia, Europe. It's raised over $63 million for support of um, Africa. Um, yeah, it was sort of like this amazing, again, precarious moment that was highly successful, especially in terms of raising money and, again, helping with this problematic nutrition, helping neighbors, building bridges, even the whole, um, concept title of the song is "We Are the World. Let's come together and help." So this is that chart. Okay, so again, if you like to be your own astrologer, you can take, one of these planets that you're interested in and kind of see where it's transiting. And again, most of these planets are making impact on Capricorn, Magha, and Aquarius. So you can look and see which of the houses uh, they are for you, Capricorn and Aquarius, and you can get some idea. Again, I have a whole playlist on the bhavas. Or in terms of very specific indications. This is just a very short list, but like the first house represents self, personality, health, reputation. And then the opposite house, so the 1-7 axis, we would call it the seventh bhava or house, is usually related to spouse, partnership, independent business. And then you can see I have the second 8 house axis and the 3-8-9 house axis. And then on the next slide, yeah, the 4-10 axis and the 5-11 axis and the 6-12 axis. So to be a little bit more, give you a little bit more information about how these planetary changes are influencing your life. But again, even that is just another layer. And then you got to figure in other things like, shop period and the subcharts and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, but if you want a little bit more information for yourself in terms of what the planetary changes are going to bring, then you can check this out. So thanks a lot for stopping by, listening to one of my talks. I appreciate your time and your interests. If you're interested in learning more Vedic astrology, I have all of my teaching videos and my concepts playlist. They can all be found there. I also do offer individual birth chart readings on Zoom. You can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com if that's of interest to get more information. I also have another YouTube channel on natural medicine, which includes other Vedic arts like Ayurveda and yoga, as well as other paradigms of natural medicine like homeopathy and naturopathic medicine. And so that channel is called Nature Source Care. And as always, I hope you found this interesting and useful. and helpful to you as you navigate the energy cycles of your own life. So until the next one, take care. Namaste.